Welcome to the first installment of our series, Poker's Behavioral Deviants. Since forming the behavioral research company, the Nonverbal Group, I have worked with thousands of people from a wide range of backgrounds. Every once in a while, I meet someone with an inordinately high capacity for reading, understanding, and anticipating the behaviors of others. When I meet this kind of person, I am always fascinated with their stories and how they develop this skill set. I use the term skill set because I am convinced that this ability is largely learned, not inherited. They represent a very small percentage of people in every industry: sales, hospitality, law enforcement, medicine, architecture, accounting, even convicted felons. Drawing from my experience and research into this topic, my central thesis is this: a large part of both the professional and sometimes personal success of these behavioral deviants can be attributed to their heightened capacity for reading others. These deviants exist at the poker table, and whether they realize it or not, a major part of their success lies in their ability to read their opponents. In the poker community, I really feel that this skill set is greatly misunderstood, undervalued, and doesn't get the attention it deserves. So I have decided to take a much closer look at this at the poker table. In this series, we will take a case study approach, diving deeper in the lives of these behavioral deviants. Now you might be thinking, why am I using the term deviant? Some people would refer to these people as gifted. Personally, I feel calling this a gift is an insult. It's a skill set and a capacity that is a result of extensive amount of exposure and feedback. Every person who has this ability has put in a significant amount of work, whether they realize it or not. I chose to use the term deviant because if we were to actually look at a normal distribution, the nonverbal aptitude of these individuals would deviate far from the norm, making them outliers. To gain a deeper understanding of these deviants, we will dissect their performance and experiences, test their nonverbal aptitude, and even interview them. But before I do this, I want to use this video as a starting point to highlight 4 specific themes that are going to come up for each of them and help explain why. First, they use a wide range of terms to describe their skill. Some call it feeling, gut, intuition, sixth sense, white magic. I have even heard players refer to it as a player's energy. I have dedicated my life to understanding these mechanisms at a much deeper level. And let's get something straight. There is no energy being emitted from players at the table. There is no mysticism behind an individual's intuition. There is behavioral information that is being rapidly accessed by someone who has extensive skill and experience playing poker and a very high aptitude for reading the behaviors of others, not only in life, but on the table as well. It's the effects of being a deviant. If we were to test one of these deviants on their capacity for identifying these shifts, they would probably do very well, but wouldn't be able to explain why. It has become so intuitive that they can't. So they use words like feeling. Some players will process massive amounts of behavioral data, and when you ask them how they knew, they will say, he leaned in a little bit, completely ignoring all the other behavioral data that happened before and during the action. Second, they are criticized for decisions at the table. If you play poker on a big stage and you are a well-known player, you are inevitably going to get criticized. Social media, commentators, YouTube, forums, comments, everyone has an opinion. But here is the problem. The critics don't have all of the information. Let me explain how this works. The casual observer sees a call out of position with a moderate hand, and then jumps to make a criticism of that play. How could you call out of position with that hand? No value, this guy's an idiot, and so on and so forth. If you're watching poker on TV, you have maybe a tenth of the behavioral information that is potentially available to that player. It's similar to if I made a questionable decision while playing online and we got into an argument, and then I just pulled out my HUD and started to explain to you that based on several thousands of hands with this player, why I did what I did. The problem with behavioral reads is that they can't actually articulate it. They can't say this player 3-bets really light but only c-bets the nuts. This is why we get forum posts where players will say, how the hell can he make that call? Everything beats you, so on and so forth. They don't have the same information that the behavioral deviant has in that moment. And to a certain extent, the deviant doesn't either, because this information is expressed or articulated as a gut feeling or intuition. If you can't articulate something, it is difficult to actually judge it. But a player may be tapping into a different world of information. If this is the case, it's tricky to argue the line that they took because we don't have all the information available to us. Third, there is an adaptive reason why they are a behavioral deviant. Now, personally, I believe that this high aptitude is learned, and often exceptional traits come from exceptional life experiences, meaning there is an adaptive reason why someone's awareness is heightened. This is often followed by lifestyle or professional choices that further strengthen this skill set. For example, let's say you grew up in a household where your father was an alcoholic and very violent, so you were always paying careful attention to his mood to avoid the negative results of him being drunk. That's an adaptive reason. Personally, when I was younger, I had a lot of anxiety, so I used to watch people very carefully as a method for easing that anxiety. To this day, as I walk down the street, I process the emotionality displayed in every single face that walks by me. It also makes sense that I have made understanding people my life's work. One of my hypotheses is that we will find similar stories in our behavioral deviants and find that skill strengthened through activities both on and off the poker table. Fourth, and this is really important, being a behavioral deviant is much different at the poker table than in everyday life. So some of you might be watching this and thinking to yourself, I am one of those people. In life, I'm really good at figuring out if people are uncomfortable or interested and tend to be very aware. Why can't I do this at the poker table? It's because reading poker players at the table is significantly different than reading people in everyday life. This is one of the reasons why the advice of behavioral experts sometimes makes absolutely no sense at the poker table. There are two core differences on why it's actually different. First is context. Poker is incredibly rich with multiple layers of information. These behavioral deviants aren't just good at reading people, they are also amazing at thinking through the layers of information at the table and, most importantly, integrating them into their thought process. So instead of this player raised, it's this player raised 4x, which is unusual, they usually min raise. I also get this feeling that they have a really strong hand. Second is that poker is so interesting because when it comes to reading behavior, it is incredibly dynamic on an intrapersonal level. You have people who have different capacities for skill, focus, attention, etc. And most importantly, poker isn't the open display of emotions and cognitive process like you see in the standard conversation. Players are often dedicating cognitive effort towards masking their behavior. Poker is unique because you aren't just reading human behavior. You are reading behavior with the sole purpose of trying to determine what that behavior is influenced by, all by having to take stack size, position, betting patterns, board texture, considering basic probabilities, and so on and so forth. This skill set requires the uptake of an incredible amount of behavioral and contextual information. If you take someone who has a really high aptitude for reading people and teach them poker, they aren't going to be instantly exceptional because they will be unable to understand the other side of the game. The beauty of these behavioral deviants is that these two things are fused together along with a massive amount of experience and critical thought at the poker table. Now, I also have this hypothesis that these behavioral deviants will also show a high aptitude for reading behavior off the table as well. They should be particularly aware and reactive in social situations, if not purely out of a function of habit. In terms of social aptitude, I have seen countless examples of this in many players, but the magician Antonio is probably the greatest example of someone who thrives in social interactions due to his ability to read people, and we will explore that later. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed my very brief introduction to the behavioral deviants, all of which I have a ton of respect for, and I'm really excited to closely examine their lives and stories to really understand how they became so good at what they do. Once again, subscribe to our email list for more amazing content, and if you have any questions at all, or have any suggestions on who you think some of these behavioral deviants should be, please reach out to me personally at blake@beyondtells.com.